All good, Jackie?
Broadcast has started.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tablelands Regional Council meeting for April 2021. Do we have any apologies? We have Councillor Wiltz is joining us via telephone technology this morning. So, Councillor Wiltz, can you hear us online there?
Yeah, gotcha, thanks, and I'm watching the live streaming. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Bernie.
Morning, Councillor.
It may be, Bernie, that if you're having conversations offline there, that you have the phone on mute. But if you're not, hopefully that's not the case. But it'd be better if you could just have the phone on so that you can talk up at any time and we can hear you. So, are you all? You all clear there, Bernie? Can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, it's loud and clear.
All right, thanks. Could I ask everyone to stand, please? I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land we are meeting on and pay respect to their elders, both past, present and emerging. I'd also like to observe a minute's silence as a mark of respect for those residents who had passed away during the previous month. Thank you. Please be seated. Declarations of any material personal interests or conflicts of interest by councillors or senior officers. Councillor Bilney.
Through the Chair, in accordance with section 150 EQ Part 4A of the Local Government Act 2009, I have a declarable conflict of interest in item 11.1, being the mountain bike trail concept plan funding request. My relationship with David Savage is that he is my brother-in-law and holds no official position within this group, but has been an active lobbyist for the projects over the years. Whilst this in itself may not be a conflict, he does own and operate a mountain bike hire business and may be financially affected with the potential expansion of the mountain bike trails. I therefore intend to leave the meeting whilst the matter is discussed and voted upon.
Thanks, Councillor Bilney. Councillors, I have a declarable conflict of interest on item 13.3, the Atherton Tennis Club application for tenure. I'm a former member of the Atherton Tennis Club. I was involved there for many years, and I'm still friends with the executive of the Atherton Tennis Club. So I'll be leaving the meeting for the discussion and the vote on 13.3. Are there any other declarations, councillors or staff? Thank you. Item 7, confirmation of the minutes of the March ordinary meeting. Can we have a mover? Councillor Hodge and Councillor Clifton. Now there's a couple of amendments I'd like to flag here this morning of those minutes before we adopt them. On page 2 of the minutes, at the bottom, we've just got the wrong pronoun. We've got she instead of he and herself instead of himself. So if those ones there can be corrected. And then on page 3, just under confirmation of the minutes there, the date 25 February 2021, that should be there. There's just a typo there. Have you got those, Jackie? Yep. Thank you. And also on page 14, at the top of the page where it's recording the vote, it should actually read with the Deputy Mayor's casting vote at the top of that page where it's carried 4-3 with the Deputy Mayor's casting vote. If councillors are happy with those corrections. Are there any other corrections, councillors? Okay. Those in favour of the minutes?
It's affirmative for me.
Thank you, Councillor Wilts. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Item 8, business arising actions out of the previous minutes. Councillors wish to raise anything from the floor? Okay. All right, we'll go on to, we have no deputations or delegations this morning. There's no mayoral minute. We'll go straight on to 11.1. Mountain Bike Trail Concept Plan Funding Request. Could we have a councillor, oh sorry, Councillor Dillon. Could we have a councillor move the report be open for discussion? Councillor Clifton, seconded. Councillor Hodge. Those in favour?
Yeah, it's affirmative for me.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Clifton, would you like to talk to this one?
I've got nothing special to add other than I support the motion and the expenditure of extra funds. I think it can be a really significant potential economic driver that is mountain bike trails in the tablelands, but I think we just have to finish them off.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Clifton. Councillor Hayden.
On page 6, it's not that I don't support it, but it says there not only are we asked to contribute to $30,000, have the Tableland Cycle Sports Club asked for us to develop the scope or help develop the scope for the concept plan and prepare the contract. It seems to be. So how much is this going to take and how much of council's workforce is this going to entail?
No, thank you for the question. No, that's not requested. That's been added by me so that we can exercise our due diligence and governance. Given that we're a major contributor to it, I would be concerned about cost overruns, and I've seen a quote, but we'd like for council to be involved in the stewardship of the expenditure of the funds, council, so that we're exercising due diligence and providing proper governance around the project. For a contribution of that size, I just think there should be officer involvement in the governance of the project.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge?
Yes, look, I'm happy with the report. If we go to like part 2B, it's subject to the outcome of the engagement established, to a steering committee to 1, develop the scope of the concept plan, 2, review the submissions received, to develop the concept plan and prepare the contract documentation. And I think as the CEO has said, previously said, that it's in principle support, so it's in principle. It's not set in stone yet until everything is set, and then it'll come back for us to tick on.
Through you, yes, the key issue there is National Parks and Wildlife, who have control of the land, and the attitudes of our traditional owners towards any expansion. It would not be prudent of us to spend public monies on a plan that can't go anywhere. So we need to do a little bit more due diligence before we make the commitment to the funding, without in any way devaluing the project and all the work that's been done to date. We just need to clear up those matters, and I wouldn't expect a massive time commitment. Councillor Hayden, just your earlier comment, we would just provide some oversight of what's put together to make sure that there are no cost overruns in matters like that.
Thank you. Councillors, any more questions on this one? Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hodge and Councillor Hayden seconding. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
Yeah, affirmative from me. Thanks, Rod.
Thank you, Councillor Wills. Item 12.1, Tablelands Acreage Estate, road name request. Would a councillor like to move this report open for discussion? Councillor Bilney. Seconder, please. Councillor Clifton. Councillor Bilney, would you like to talk to that one?
No, I think the report is clear in its intent.
Very good. Councillors, would anyone else like to talk or ask questions on this matter? Okay. Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bilney and Councillor Hayden. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Councillor.
Yes, I'm in favour of that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Carried unanimously. 12.2, emergency declaration of local pest Amazon frogbit under Tablelands Regional Council Local Law Number 3, Community and Environment 2019. Councillor Cardew is moving that open for discussion, and Councillor Hodge is seconding. Those in favour?
Affirmative for me.
Thank you. Councillor Cardew.
I was wondering if the officer could talk to this one, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Through the chair, we have been approached by Mariba Shire Council, who is actually downstream from us with regards to Amazon frogbit. Amazon frogbit has become quite a concern. We had it as an alert species in our biosecurity plan for a long time, and it is present in Peterson Creek in Yangabara. It has been declared by Mariba and by King as priority species for control, and we would like basically to issue an emergency declaration to move it from being an alert species to actually being a locally declared pest. The council resolution would allow us to have it as an emergency declaration for 3 months, which gives us the time to modify the subordinate local law, to add it to the schedule in the local law and make it a locally declared pest.
Thank you. Councillors, any more questions? Councillor Billman?
Yep, through the chair. Tudor, I've been told that frogbit weed is freely available for sale for like fish tanks and the like. So what is the impact of any of this emergency declaration, and what part does Biosecurity Australia, what have they done in relation to any declarations as well, if any, to prohibit those sort of sales? And once, if this is endorsed as recommended, would we be then advocating to other councils for their declaration and support as well? I know there's 3 or 4 questions within that, Tudor, I apologise, but.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, yes, it is what we're aiming to do, and I think that the most important thing we're doing here today, if by issuing an emergency declaration for Amazon frogbit, we are increasing the awareness around Amazon frogbit and basically informing our community that it is a problem, it is a serious invasive pest. At the moment, as you have correctly stated, Councillor, it is available for sale. It is available for sale over the internet. People see something for sale, they assume that it's okay. We're giving out a strong message today that it is not okay, it is a problem. It actually works hand in hand with a lot of initiatives. I mentioned already Keynes and Mariba, and you will remember the presentation last month from John Morrow here at the council meeting, as well as the state of New South Wales has declared it a pest, Brisbane has declared it a pest, and on the 1st of February 2021, actually ACT has declared it a pest as well. So it's quickly becoming a nationally recognized problem. I think raising awareness is the most important thing we are doing. It's followed by the ability to prohibit sale and propagation of this pest and actually search for pests if need be. With regards to biosecurity's involvement in this project, I have sought further clarification from Biosecurity Queensland. I don't have an answer for you today. It's certainly something that we should take further with other councils, like we already do with Mariba and Keynes, and something that I would like discussed at the next DPMAC meeting, as well as the NAMAC meeting with the FNQ group of councils, because it is a regional problem and it's becoming a national problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tudor.
Any more questions on this one, councillors? Would a councillor like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Billney's moving the recommendation. Councillor Clifton seconding. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
Yeah, I'm in favour of that, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Item 12.3. Extension dry hire of plant and equipment waste sites. Can a councillor move this for discussion, please? Councillor Hodge, and seconded, Councillor Cardew. Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So the resolution is for a 12-month extension of the contract. I've learnt what dry hire means. It means that the company just provides the equipment, and our officers then they drive it and operate it. I'm well aware that the contract at the moment is to not a company that's local, but we will be, after this extension, if it gets approved, we'll then go to contract in due course. So other than that, fine with it. Thanks.
Any other questions on this one, or John, did you have anything you wanted to add on this one?
Yeah, just in response to Councillor Hodge statement in regards to once this 12-month extension expires, we'll go back out to market. There is the option under the contract. It is a 12-month +1 option. So there is a further option available to council if they wish to exercise it in 12 months' time to extend the contract. So I would suggest that we consider it on its merits at the end of this 12 months that's coming, and reconsider.
Well, if
Councillor
that's the case, it wouldn't be prudent to wait for 12 months, otherwise we'd have to extend it again, wouldn't it? So basically in the next 6 months we'd have to really make a decision whether we're going to go to contract or not.
We've got time.
Yes.
We've got time to reconsider.
We'll take note of the position you've expressed, Councillor, in relation to further extension.
Councillors, would someone like to move the officer's recommendation if there's no more questions? Councillor Hodge, moving. Seconder. Councillor Cardew. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
Affirmative to me.
Thank you. Carried unanimously. Item 12.4, Community Revegetation Nursery and Land Restoration Fund Pilot Program Information. Could I have that report open, please, for discussion? Councillor Clifton and Councillor Hodge. Thank you. Councillor Clifton? Sorry, we need to vote on that, sorry. Those in favour of opening that report? Apologies. Yep.
I'm in favour.
Thank you. Carried. Yeah, Councillor Clifton, sorry.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to, there are a series of queries that I have in relation to this report that I haven't had an opportunity to have answered yet, and that I think other councillors should be aware of those queries and what the outcomes of them are. So I would be proposing that we leave this report lie on the table for a month, at which time we can consider those questions and then consider it at the next ordinary council meeting. I can go through some of those points if you like.
I think that would be helpful, Councillor Clifton, just so councillors know what issues that you're concerned with.
I think I've got 4 issues. I'm uncertain about one aspect of the depreciation figures in the report that's available to us. The depreciation of the nursery at something like $4,700 a year seems to me to be extremely low, bearing in mind that the depreciation figure for the Youngerburra Memorial Hall is $9,700. There's a lot more asset value in our nursery operation than there is in that old building. The second question I have is that the report speaks about a potential, and I use inverted commas, income from a carbon credit project that we're involved in of $100,000 over the period of the time. Now that carbon credit project is our share of that project from government sources is $354,000, and I therefore find it hard to believe that we would be able to generate $100,000 worth of surplus, a third of that project. And it's not as simple as that, but I think that needs a really good look at. I think that the third point I would make, and I focus on the budget aspects of it, because over a 5-year period of time, this is in the vicinity of $800,000 of ratepayers' money that will go out for this particular project. Now, I'm not against the nursery and its associated projects at all, but I would really need to make sure that we're absolutely dead certain that we know what we're getting into. And I have those questions that I've sought to have answered, but they haven't been answered completely for me. I also note, the final one that I note is just around the corner from our nursery is the treat operation. It's a sizable thing with many volunteers, And this report is not, from my perspective, does not detail sufficiently any synergy of relationship that could be had between our nursery and treat and the use of volunteers, etc., etc. These, I think, are reasonable questions, bearing in mind we're looking at the budget talks about akin to $800,000 of ratepayers' money over 5 years. I think we need to have a bit more of a critical look at it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Clifton. Before I was just going to go to the CEO, but before I do that, any other comments about this one or questions? Councillor Hodge.
Just one that's sort of pertinent to what's gone on in the past, I think, and it's to do with section 3 in 3.1, where it says the background. And I'll start from, I won't read it all out, but I'll go to, it says, from the middle of the paragraph, it says, operational decisions are based on Council's strategic and operational plan directions and are made based on financial delegation. Due to the usually short funding application timeframes and in consideration of alignment with Council's strategic and operational plan, directions decisions concerning funding application have in the past been made operationally and without formal council endorsement. And I think this is one of a part of here that's got to stop, because my question is, and I'll put it on notice, is that in the project LRF 061, was there a council resolution to participate in that particular project?
Through the chair, if I may, there was no council resolution to participate in it on the program.
Just speaking generally, not about that, just wasn't here, I don't know, but we've just had a grant funding application submitted in the short time that I've been here, which you are all aware of, but which there are no resolutions for. And that, as you would well know, is based on the timeframes that we're given. So they're workshopped, as I understand was the case here, but we don't commit them to a council resolution generally until we know the outcome of that. And in some cases, as far as creating a public record goes, the nature of the funding itself prohibits that. We're not meant to make public declarations about what we've applied for or secured, sometimes until we acquit them. So we do have to look at the totality of the documentation and requirements of the state and federal governments that surround any funding application. But not speaking specifically about this, but just to say, in my limited experience here, we've already agreed at a workshop level about particular projects for which we've submitted funding applications and which the outcomes of which won't be known for some time.
Thank you. Just, Councillor Wills, did you want to say something?
No, just very interesting perspective and good points made there by the CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll go Councillor Cardew next.
Please, CEO, with your comments about grant funding, grant applications being workshopped, and then the applications proceed from there. Once the application becomes finalised and we know we've got the grant money, is it then prudent to put that to council to actually approve the expenditure of that grant, or say no, we don't want it?
Oh, it may be. We are looking at the processes that we follow and how we actually go about committing those to the public record, Mr Deputy Mayor, but probably need to look at each one on its merit. Some of the grants that we apply for are quite minor. We've seen one also since I've been here, which we've secured. Everyone seems to be aware of it and happy with it, but it achieves an operational plan outcome. Just don't remember what it was now, sorry. But we are looking at the process that we follow in total, Councillor, so that we do ensure that the grants that we apply for make their way through to the public record to the extent that we're permitted to publicise them. and I'm working with the general manager, or the general managers and people involved in the grants process to get to a system that works for us, where you feel you have the level of information that you'd like about any particular grant, and that we don't disrespect our funding partners and their requirements for confidentiality in some cases.
I just think that, you know, I understand that there's timing issues and things when you make an application for grants and the like, but once it's been approved, you know, the state of the feds say, yes, we approve this grant. I think it should come back to council in some form to be a public record, so that we know what's going on. It just, lots of times you see publications stating certain things that we're doing this because we've got grant funding, and we really don't, you know, unless...
Through the chair, are we actually talking about the community revegetation nursery, or are we on to another subject about...
Yeah, so because Councillor Hayden's made a good point. We've taken a little bit of a diversion here, which I'm happy for us to deal with that at a later time. But I would like, thanks Councillor Hayden, I would like to backtrack to Councillor Clifton's original comments, and Councillor Clifton said that, or suggested that we could perhaps lie the motion on the table. However, after hearing Councillor Clifton's inquiry, I think it may be more appropriate that deferring the report to be able to get the information that you're seeking to get before you can make a decision. Would that, Councillor Clifton?
That would suit me very much, Mr. Mayor. I think a couple of things I would say. This report, an element of the nursery is the Land Restoration Fund pilot program, and this is the first time this council, it was signed in May last year, this is the first time this council has seen a formal document in relation to it. So there's a lot of speculation backwards and forwards. There's a lot of effort being put into it by officers, but there's a lot of thought being currently put into it by councillors. So if we could defer it for the month, rather than leave it lay on the table, I'd be quite happy with that.
I'll just get some advice from the CEO. Is that
whether it lies on the table or it's deferred, it's the same process. The more technical way is it's left on the table, and then it's taken from the table at the next meeting and then debated.
Yeah, look, just referring to the standing orders here, our lying on the table mechanism seems to refer lying on the table for this meeting, so that we deal with it later on in the meeting. So that's why I was suggesting
it stays on the table until it's taken from the table usually, but yeah, it's fine, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
defer it till the next meeting.
So look, it'll achieve the same outcome, I think, if we defer it. So perhaps if Councillor Clifton can propose a motion of deferment.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I propose that that this report be deferred for discussion at the next ordinary council meeting.
Yeah, and would you like to add there, Councillor Clifton, to cover some of those issues that you've raised as needing more information on? Just not to list them again, but
yeah,
for the purpose of dealing with those.
For the purpose of dealing with questions and misunderstandings that have arisen as a result of the report.
So once we've got that up, we'll see if we've got a seconder. That council defer the report prepared by the Manager for Planning and Environment for discussion to the next meeting of council for the purposes of dealing with questions raised by councillors. Are you happy with that, Councillor?
I'm happy with that. Thank you, Mr.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Clifton's proposed motion, alternative motion? We'll go Councillor Cardew, seconding. Those in favour, can you won't be able to see that motion, Councillor Wills, will you?
I can email it to him.
Looks like we've lost him. Did it? Okay. So Yeah, we'll just see if we can get Councillor Wilts back before we go to the vote.
Hello?
Hi, Councillor Wilts. Yeah, well, the line dropped out, we think.
Yeah, I just sent an email just advising of that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just not sure how much you've missed, but Councillor Clifton has proposed an alternative motion regarding the community revegetation nursery.
I've just
Yes,
emailed it to
yeah,
you.
I heard the bulk of that.
Okay, good. So Councillor Clifton's alternative motion has been moved by Councillor Clifton, seconded by Councillor Cardew, and we're just about to take a vote on deferring this to our next meeting. So those in favour of deferring this one, thank you. Councillor Wilts?
Yes, I'm in favour of just reading the resolution Jackie just forwarded to me.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Thank you, that's carried unanimously.
Thanks, councillors.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item 13.1, Finance Report March 2021. Could we have a councillor open this report for discussion? Councillor Hodge, and a seconder, Councillor Clifton. Those in favour?
I'm in favour.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Hodge, would you like to talk to this?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, Erica. Pretty happy with the report. Everything seems to be tracking fairly well to the revised budget. I just want to go to, I think it's just a typo into the report where payments outside the page 168. It's to do with King Concreting contract. I think, even though there's a difference of 49,500 between the two, but there's two same contracts in force. Just show you.
Through the chair, a bit flabbergasted that hasn't been corrected because that was flagged before the report was finalised for publication, and I wasn't sure that the duplication had been removed. So I apologise for that not having been done in time.
So Councillor Hodge, what page is that on?
Page 168. You go to King Concreting. It's to do with the works of Queensland, the reservoir up there. $2.4 million.
So there should be only one purchase order. So yeah, my apologies again.
Apologies, I didn't pick up on that. Either. Sorry.
So through the CEO, so Gary, do we need to amend our motion with that, or how should we deal with that?
Just noting the correction on page 168, the removal of the duplicated record.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Thanks, Councillor Hodge. And councillors, Councillor Clifton?
Again, on page 174, there is a fourth from the bottom is a referral to Wise Workplace and a figure of 7,250. And my question is that the total figure, expected figure, is that for one investigation or for all investigations? The figure is 7,250.
I don't know. I'll take your question on notice, Councillor.
Thank you.
Before I go to our Manager of Finance, any more specific questions, councillors? Erica, would you like to say some words?
So just like Councillor Hodge had mentioned, so we're travelling very, very close to our operational budget, which is great news. So we're less than 1% on both our operating revenue and operating expenditure. So we're travelling very well. During the month of March, we have also invested some of our cash with a local branch. So $10 million has been invested in a term deposit. The rest of our funds actually remains with our QTC, which does earn interest as well. We have made that investment through this period. We've also had the rates notices fell due towards the end of March, so a lot of that payment has been made. We have now since sent out reminder notices and are working with residents on payment plans and those sorts of things. So just to provide an update, we continue to work with that space, but it all is travelling well in that area. Yeah, probably the highlights for the month, I suppose.
Thank you. Any questions for Erica? Okay, councillors, do we have a councillor that'd like to move the officer's recommendation with the amendment that we've got up there on the screen, that we correct the duplicated record on page 168, and that there's a question on notice regarding one supplier there. Councillor Hodge is moving that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hayden. Those in favour?
Affirmative, mate.
Thank you. Okay. Item 13.2, Corporate Plan 2021-2026. Can I have a mover to open the report, please? Councillor Bilney, and a seconder, please. Councillor Hodge. Thank you. Those in favour of opening the report?
Affirmative, mate.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Bilney, would you like to?
Yeah, through the chair, if I could ask General Manager Hillary, when I read this, I'm a little bit confused about the 9 months situation, in that it would appear to be, should have been consultation occurred 9 months ago. Can you just sort of give me a bit of a briefing on how this works in just a broad extent as far as the plan and communication?
Sure. So, thank you through the chair. The corporate plan is a requirement for local government. We have to have a 5-year corporate plan, and the corporate plan is required to be informed by engagement. We are not required to do a community plan, but council has determined that is an appropriate thing to do, to have a long-term community plan which reflects the desires and wishes of our community. So this corporate plan has been developed with information from the existing community plan and the engagement that we undertook as part of that, and also the customer satisfaction survey and other feedback that councillors have received. The engagement plan that's associated with this is a extensive community engagement activity that will both allow a review of the corporate plan to ensure that it's actually still relevant, and also inform the development of a new community plan. So that length of community engagement is actually well beyond what would normally be required for a corporate plan, and will allow us to build a meaningful community plan.
So just one step further on that, when we do that communication, it's quite reasonable to expect that we can adjust the corporate plan in the future depending on what that outcomes are from the community.
Absolutely. So the actual recommendation that's put to council today is that as part of that, we undertake that broad and meaningful community engagement, and then come back to council with any recommended changes to the corporate plan identified as a result of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions on this one, councillors?
No. Did you want to add anything else, Hillary?
No, thank you through the chair.
No. Okay. All right. Can we have a councillor move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bilney and Councillor Hayden. Okay, those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
That's a yes from me.
Thank you, carried unanimously.
I can't believe I just put my hand up to vote.
All right. I was more interested if you stood up for the minutes.
Okay, item 13.3, the Mayor's declared an interest in it. So, can I ask for a mover and a seconder to open up the report for discussion? Councillor Hodge, moved, seconded by Councillor Billney. Okay, all in favour? Okay.
Yes, mate.
Would someone like to start discussion?
Thank you. First of all, I'm happy that we're going for the licence instead of a lease, because when it's a lease, it brings in a lot more costs to the organisation. So the only concern I have is, and I'd like to go over to our field officer now, if you don't mind, just to give us the plan going forward on how we're going to implement what may be in the licence in regards to electricity, who else uses it, is it open to everybody, all these sorts of things.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Chair, I guess firstly, just at the outset, it's probably worth pointing out that from a legislative perspective, the proposed grant of a licence is not necessarily something that needs to be formally endorsed by council, because we're not disposing of a non-current asset in the form of a lease. However, on the back of last month's meeting in relation to the lights that council decided to fund for the tennis club, that this report was requested. We've got a fair bit of guidance in the recent policy that council adopted, our land use and tenure policy, as how these matters play out. In terms of specifically in relation to the councillor's question about the details of the licence, we intentionally haven't included, or been very prescriptive as the terms of the licence, simply because there's things that we need to resolve with the tennis club. So we had quite a positive meeting with the members of the tennis club a week or so ago, and issues around the lighting and electricity. There's some work that needs to be done because of different electricity feeds and metering and that sort of stuff. So from a practical perspective, we're yet to understand what that may look like. I anticipate that the status quo is probably going to prevail, at least in the short term, and a licence gives us that flexibility that council can set those costs either to the tennis club, or if it's impractical to be able to meter that electricity and the usage costs, that council may have to pick up some of the costs there. So just to give you an indication, I think the Dog Obedience Club, some of their electricity usage feeds off one of the feeds from the tennis club, and there's some other lighting that is directed in other parts of the reserve. So it's a bit complicated at this stage from on the ground, so hence why we haven't specified who's responsible for what. Similarly, the insurance was another consideration that we've looked at, so public liability insurance. The tennis club, despite not having any sort of formal lease or use rights over that facility, have typically had a code system where it's under lock and key, and the consequence of that is that their insurance generally covers the general public's usage as they're controlling that. If, for instance, there's more free access to the community, whether the gates be opened or whether that code system is taken over by council or whatever the case might be, it's probably reasonable that council's casual hires insurance would pick up that responsibility for the general public's use. So those are all sorts of things that we need to work out, and I'm confident we can reflect that in the terms of the licence. And it also gives council greater flexibility for the future use of that precinct and what they may want to do. So the tennis club, once we explained the intention of the policy, which was to sort of provide greater equity and sort of assign the use rights commensurate with the amount of cost that's expected of a club, they were fairly comfortable from that discussion. So does that clarify your question, Councillor?
Thanks very much. There's probably only one other question, of course, their financial files are in the agenda, and their profit and loss, even though they had $12,000 loss last year, they did have $9,000 depreciation, $4,000 in repairs. So if we take that away, it's not so bad. It's still got $4,000 cash. But the other thing is in their balance sheet where yourself and our officers will have to, well, it's up to them what they do on their balance sheet, but they've got you know, net 71,798 in their building, which they believe that they own. So they'll have to be sued.
Yeah, so just to comment on that through the chair. I guess ultimately, you know, those sorts of matters are something for the club to resolve. We can certainly alert them to that sort of thing. From a viability perspective, we focus on their cash flow ability. When we were looking at a lease assessment, given that there's two parcels, that would actually trigger two leases because they're different tenures. And under Section 93 of the Local Government Act, that would render the land rateable land, and we've assessed that as sort of a cost that would, you know, unnecessarily burden the club, I guess, when all we're trying to do is trying to facilitate the continued use. To your point, Councillor, certainly we've considered their financial position. As far as the assets go, that's not an uncommon scenario across our asset portfolio, and we've sort of alerted the finance manager and our facilities manager of those issues. So.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil.
Anyone else? No?
Excuse me. Through the chair, Phil, just, I mean, a licence allows non-exclusive use, so, I mean, I just need to be comfortable in my own mind that if the gates are going to be left open, you know, how do we control vandalism and protection of the club's assets? So I think there's still a fair bit of work, and which you've alluded to, so I get that. Just another out there question to my own mind. A licence, is that generally a 12-month sort of tenure arrangement, or can it be negotiated for a longer term? You know, I wouldn't like to see, you know, 10 years or 20 years. I mean, smaller terms, is that an acceptable?
Through the chair, so generally a licence, the distinction between a licence and a lease is a lease provides a proprietary interest in the land. A licence is merely a contract to use the land. In our tenure policy, it contemplates it, you know, generally a starting point of around 5 years for a lease, just so we're not revisiting it all the time. But by the same token, we'd have provision in there where we can terminate that agreement at will with a reasonable period of notice, and obviously that'd be done in consultation with the relevant party. But it just gives council greater flexibility when we're having those conversations over land where we don't really know the longer term future. So we don't want to sort of restrict council's ability to, you know, buy a 10 or 20 year lease on land where we don't have a clear long-term direction. So hence why a licence is probably preferred, and in practical terms it's not going to probably change the way that the tennis club use that site. So.
Anybody else? I've got a couple for you, Phil.
Yep.
With the licensing and the booking of it for public use, I certainly think we need to ensure that it's a locked system, and similar to our halls or anything else, there's no real difference to that. It's a locked system, because vandalism will be an issue, because, you know, get in there, kids in there with bikes, on the court, whatever. And there's also, I know that the club has a storage facility there that they have whatever is behind there. So I think from a vandalism point of view, that needs to be a closed system. The other one I have for you is that if someone from the general public wants to use that court, I'm assuming that the nets belong to the club. So under a licence agreement, the club would take their nets away after their use, and there would be no nets on that court for public use. So is that going to be an additional cost to council, or is there some sort of an agreement with the club that leave their nets in place?
So thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. So essentially that could be conceivable. We could have the gates open, but we've already acknowledged those issues. The tennis club have got a system where they've got a coded gate. Like I said, in the short term, the status quo is probably going to prevail just for practical reasons. We're not going to look at changing the world at this stage, but we're aware of, and I've sort of identified in the report, you know, how some of the other tennis clubs in the region are managed. Certainly once you get out into, you know, Mount Garnet, Walkland, those down Overton, those sort of facilities, they're open as a right to the public, but acknowledging that the quality of the court and, you know, the importance of having those facilities operational is probably not there, because they're there for sort of community use, not club use where they've got organised fixtures. So we did have those conversations with the club to sort of say, well, look, we wouldn't shift to an alternative service delivery in terms of booking until we actually had a suitable way of managing that. And that's where the insurance is an important consideration for them, because if effectively they're holding the keys for the gate, their insurer may require the public liability to cover the general public. So we wouldn't change any of that at the outset until we've got a suitable alternative. That's the short answer. So, and that may, just to go on to your query about costs, talking with Tennis Queensland, they do have systems which is called Book a Court or something like that. Not sure of the costing or anything like that, but these are things that we could explore, and then obviously we'd need to consider whether it's affordable and practical and all those sorts of things. But we've got Malanda and Yungaburra in a similar consideration to this one. They're still operating under the old key at the supermarket sort of scenario, so that has its own sort of challenges, but it works for them currently. But as we consider their licence or lease arrangements, then we'll have to deal with them as well.
That was my next question, Bill, was with the other clubs, you know, like, whatever we do here, I feel that we'll be setting the bar, setting the standard, and that we'll be pursuing the other clubs in the same manner to have some sort of licence or some sort of agreement in place. I know that road code is an exception, it's freehold, so it'll be out of that equation, but as for the rest of them.
Yeah, certainly we've had conversations with the other clubs to some extent. You know, I think Yungaburra are struggling to get a committee, which I think they may have recently managed to get one together. But yeah, from what we know in our initial assessments of theirs, it's going to be a similar type arrangement. It's just how well equipped council is with being able to manage bookings and that sort of stuff, because traditionally the clubs have done a pretty good job of that in the past. But obviously with declining memberships, declining financial capacity and volunteers, it's becoming harder and harder for small clubs to continue to have that responsibility. So if they're
Bill, during your investigations with those other clubs that aren't viable or don't have a membership or don't have the like, who provides the equipment for those courts that are being used by the general public?
So, well, by default, I think the ones at Herberton and the like would be council. If there's no body that's got any use rights or you know, management of the court, then by default it falls on our facilities team to pick up the slack. And so that's where we're sort of heading. So we've got to try and be a bit smarter as to which ones we invest in money into and maintaining and preserving, and which ones are we're going to sort of lower that service level by just having community courts.
Anything further? Okay, so can I have a mover in a second or two adopt the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hodge moved, seconded by Councillor Bilby. All in favour?
It's affirmative for me, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Carried unanimously. Thanks.
Item 13.4, engagement of Robert Morrow Technology for a further 3-month period. Could I have Councillor move that for discussion, please? Open for discussion. Councillor Cardew, seconded. Councillor Clifton. Councillor Cardew, would you like to talk to that, or?
I'd just like the officer to give us a brief overview of that, please.
Yeah, so yeah, through the CEO, thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks. Thanks, Mr Mayor. The period of time, the 3-month period of time will be used to gather more detailed information on the usage of the service, and that information will then guide our thinking as to whether this is the right way to continue, or whether we should then perhaps look at a longer term engagement, or go back to the market for a longer term engagement, and see whether we can get better pricing by having a longer term in place initially than what we did with this particular service, which was a 12 by 12, to the manager. Yeah. So if we then look at perhaps a longer period, whether we get a better return, and how we can look to build local content more strongly.
Thank you. Any questions for the CEO, councillors? No? Can we have a councillor move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Cardew's moving the officer's recommendation. Councillor Hodge seconding. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
It's affirmative for me, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Carried. Item 13.5, Public Art Policy and RADF Advisory Committee. Can we have a councillor open this for discussion, please? Councillor Bilney. And a seconder, Councillor Hodge. Okay. Councillor Bilney, would you like to talk to that?
No, sorry, Mayor, I cracked my fingers. No.
Will we go over to you? Oh, of course. We might go, if there are no questions from councillors at this moment, we'll go to Glenn. Thank you, Glenn.
Well, through the Mayor, as we've discussed before, the policy is really a formalisation of the existing situation and obligations that we have in terms of copyright and moral rights of the artists. We have a significant suite of public art and war memorials and commemorative memorials in our region, some of which have fallen into disrepair over the years, and we're very keen to make sure that we meet our obligations and rights through the formalisation of this policy, and also ensure going forward that we undertake the appropriate community consultation with regard to accessioning, commissioning new works, repairs and maintenance of existing work, and also when it comes to decommissioning works of public art, because as I'm sure you realise, a lot of public art isn't intended to last forever, and there's very often considerable community attachment to the public art in their communities, and through endorsement of this policy, that will allow we officers to develop appropriate procedures that will make sure that we undertake appropriate consultation going forward.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'd like to see some additional wording included in the policy, just to reinforce the obligations of the artists if they're providing artwork or monument or what have you. So in section 4.3 under ownership, I'd like to add to the end of that first paragraph the words to the effect, by entering into a contract, the artist will be responsible for all costs for the installation, repairs and maintenance, and the deassessing and removal of public art as directed by council. I think it's very important that that wording is clear in our policy to take away any misinterpretation around future council officers, if that may be the case. So that's what I'd like to see added to the policy.
Through the chair?
Yes.
I think that may create some issues with regard to any future public art. Obviously, we couldn't apply that retrospectively, so we're talking about new works of art. some of which might potentially be quite significant, and that would be an enormous impost on the artist. I don't believe that's the usual case with public art, and if it's installed on council land, then we have responsibility for the ongoing repairs and maintenance and ultimately the decommissioning of that public art. It wouldn't sit with the artist usually.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment? Look, I thanks that, I acknowledge that, but my view is that if we're going to accept something from somebody, they need to be responsible for it, because otherwise it's going to end up being a burden to council and a cost to ratepayers. So if the artist, if it's a good sound contribution or what have you, then there should be no fear from the artist to be able to provide that level of support for their product. I don't see it being a problem at all. What I'm fearful of is that, and like so many times we've been, this has been brought up before, where something's being gifted to council and then the ratepayers end up with the burden of repair, maintenance, removal and the like. So I just want to see it quite clear in the policy that it's the artist's responsibility for the cost for the installation, repairs and removal of their, I noticed in here that they said they're going to be a part of the contract is that the asset will become council's, but that's fine because that's just the way the law is, but they need to be responsible for their contribution to the whatever their art piece is.
Did you want to respond to that, Gwyneth, or?
I'm happy.
Yeah, so Councillor Hayden.
I don't see this art as any different to sporting fields, because fixtures constructed on pond council land generally merge with the land and are ultimately owned and the responsibility of the council. And I don't see how you can ask people who do art and put it on council land to come along and remove it when we've okayed them to put it there. So to me, I just don't see that is actually feasible and fair. So it's no different to sporting clubs putting infrastructure onto council land that we're responsible for.
Yeah, Councillor Billney.
Yeah, through the chair. Just going on what Councillor Cardew said, I think by the very nature of gifting it to council, it's the gift is and ownership's transferred to us, and the maintenance and the ongoing responsibilities then transfer accordingly. That's how I see it.
It would be.
I will go to the CEO and then we'll go to Councillor.
I was just thinking, just to support what Councillor Billon just said, once those matters would be dealt with at the time it was gifted, rather than as a blanket rule. If we didn't want to accept a gift, we don't have to accept the gift.
Right.
I should have thought, but...
Yeah, so through the chair, any offer to gift public art or develop public art on council land would be subject to the same assessment that any community request project is. And would be assessed accordingly, and ongoing cost of repairs and maintenance is of course part of that assessment process, so it would be on a case-by-case basis. I think applying a broad brush to all public art would probably discourage any future public art in our region.
Councillor Hodge?
Yeah, we just got to be careful here. If we take an example of, say, at Rocky Creek, where we commissioned the sign, you know, that has the nurse from during the Second World War and that, you know. I mean, we could not say to that artist, you know, you go and maintain it, because we actually commissioned them to provide that and paid for it. So I think I understand what Kev's coming from. So we've got to be very, very careful, I think, on what we accept as public art, and I think that's more to what probably I think Kev's saying. We've got to really be careful what we accept as public art, and once we accept it, we have to accept it.
Yeah, so we'll go Councillor Cardew.
Look, I think the sporting fields, being that Councillor Hayden brought up, most of the sporting fields are looked after by the sporting committees themselves. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we accept that the sporting field people look after their assets, okay, their grounds, and most of them do. And it's no different to these people here. The question is then, you know, like, why would council take ownership of that art. If that's the case, if this is going to be the case, if that's the stumbling point, we taking ownership of the art. Why are we taking ownership of their art? Why don't we just allow them to have a license or a lease agreement or whatever agreement's in place to install that piece of art or whatever at that location, but they maintain it. I don't want to see a burden on the ratepayers for maintaining art. And the other thing is that when the criteria for infrastructure being put on council land, I know we have a policy and a procedure and a criteria. If someone wants to build a shed or put up light poles or something, there's stringent criteria to be assessed against before council will give permission for that to happen. Is that criteria going to be the same as for artwork? Because I think it should be.
Through the chair, there will certainly be criteria developed for assessing any potential development of public art, and it could be public art that we commission as part of some new building or development or master plan. It could be public art that the community wants and they come to council with a proposal, but all those items would be assessed, including the suitability of the public art for the location, the suitability of the public art for that community, the ongoing costs and maintenance, and its likely lifespan, because some public art is only expected to last 5 to 10 years and then it's renewed. So all those things have to be met and will be reviewed through the operational procedures that we will develop off the back of the policy. And I think it is very hard to apply a broad brush to all public art that can range from $250,000 bronze sculpture that isn't going to cost anything to repair in the next 100 years to a mural that possibly has a 10-year lifespan, no maintenance, and then it's decommissioned and removed at the end of that. It's very hard for us to apply a broad brush to art, which includes sculpture, which includes murals, which includes memorials, and we're comparing apples and pears, I suppose.
Councillor Cardew.
Gwyneth, look, the broad brush thing, I mean, it's no different through the assessment process. The way I see it is that, you know, if someone wants to put a multi-million-dollar sports stadium in one of our sporting facilities, as opposed to building a lawn locker to store the mower, we apply that same rationale to that application regardless of what it is. But I don't see that being any different to being different pieces of art of whatever magnitude. I don't see that we should be doing it any differently. So the two questions that I have is that in this policy here where it says we take ownership, we enter into an agreement to take ownership, I question that. And I also go back to my original statement where the costs of installation, repairs and decommissioning needs to be addressed in there further, I think.
All right. So Councillor Hodge, we need to wrap this up. So Councillor Hodge.
Okay. Look, I understand where it's coming from, but I can't support it because I think public art is the fabric of our community, and I think it's very, very important. I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I think with, you know, a policy can be changed at any time. I think maybe we pass this one and maybe work up something to get something. How are we going to accept public art in the future? But I really couldn't support that at the moment. So.
Any more comments from councillors? So Councillor Cardew, would you like to propose an alternative motion? How would you like to proceed from here?
Look, I don't want to put up an alternative motion because I don't think I've got the support from the rest of the council, but I'm just happy to go through the process as it is.
Do we have a councillor who would like to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hodge is moving the officer's recommendation. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Vilney seconding. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation?
I'm in favour, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, carried. Would you like yours recorded against them? Yeah. So if we can record Councillor Cardew's against on that one, thank you. Okay. Thanks, councillors. Do we have any notices of motion, or do we have any business without notice?
Notices of motion.
Sorry.
There's no notice of motion, Mr. Mayor.
No. Business without notice. Councillor Clifton.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to make a statement, if I may, about the Yungaburra Triathlon that was conducted on the weekend. Do I have your...
Yes,
yeah.
yes, please.
The Yungaburra Triathlon was raced last weekend, the 16th and 17th of April, and I'd like to commend it as an outstanding success. A total of 440 competitors in all groups made it a wonderful event. The competitors were from all ages, classes and fitness levels, and it was gratifying to see them all come out to participate, given that the 2020 triathlon was not able to be held due to COVID. Crowd participation was welcome, and the whole thing generated a feeling of friendliness and fun. And the weather was perfect for athletes. Cool with a small amount of rain. Our Jodie Coco, one of our major organisers, informed me that on Monday the pack-up was extremely wet. The Yungaburra's very own Megan Henry won decisively on her home ground and deserves our congratulations, and thanks need to go to Dale Jordan, who was the manager, and Phil Hungerford, who was the technical triathlon expert, for their expert management, and particular thanks to the hard-working band of volunteers. The TRC staff who were there were quite a number, but the ones that I've singled out are Jodie, Gwyneth and Nicole, and some others who gave their time all weekend, and they have our heartfelt gratitude. Many people volunteered quietly and effectively to keep the wheels turning, well, to make a smooth and professional event. I noticed at one stage there was ex-senior police officer Rolf Stratemeyer standing there waving his hands around like he was a young cadet on first traffic duty. It shows the strong sense of community of the Tablelands when everyone mucks in, and all those volunteers have our gratitude. The triathlon is one of just a series of signature destination marketing events that bring attention and economic benefit to our region, and we look forward to a post-COVID bigger and better event in 2022, looking forward to a target competitor list of 600, which was the number we had pre-COVID. So thank you to all those involved, and I look forward to 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Clifton, and look, I'll just add my thoughts there as well. I did go to the event both on the Saturday and the Sunday, and yeah, Councillor Clifton's absolutely right. It was absolutely brilliant. Really good energy, good vibe, and you know, yes, lots of volunteers, but the TRC staff who were down there, they're certainly well beyond the call of their duty to do what they did over that weekend, and then to go back on the Monday and tidy up or pack up in the pouring rain. It's a really big effort, and I commend all of them, and I thank Councillor Clifton for tabling that. And can I suggest, Councillor Clifton, that we send what you've compiled there to Jackie, and that could be attached to the minutes, perhaps?
Happy to do that.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Clifton. Are there any other business without notice? Okay, our next meeting is the 27th of May, and I'll declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Chief.
You still there, Bernie?